and welcome to a very special shorts compilation right here on the Cine-Files. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, Cine-Files fans. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, and host here and voiceover artist here in San Diego, California.
And this is something we do every week, both for our supporters on Patreon and for our subscribers on Apple Podcasts, where we get suggestions from the audience, sometimes suggestions from John or I. And we've had some of our best discussions we've ever had have happened right here on Cine-Files Shorts.
Yeah, you might make a case, Steve, that this is our improv experience or improv show, because we don't, read up ahead of time on these questions. We answer extemporaneously. Of course, you've probably, occasionally read the questions ahead of time, but usually we read them or suggest them to each other, and then we just talk about it, how we feel about it, with no real prepared script. So I kind of like the improv nature of our shorts. And this is a fun way to kind of introduce them to some of you who don't necessarily get a chance to listen to them on the regular.
Well, and this is something, I mean, the show is what it is, and I love doing it with you. It's very structured, but sometimes the best parts of the show are those digressions where we go off on a topic. And this is really an opportunity, partially because you and I just like talking to each other. And so it's great to get suggestions from our patrons of like, hey, we'd like to hear you talk about movies that really scared you when you were a kid, or talk about how documentaries work. And that's one that we have on here. We have one of our episodes is called "This Documentary is Biased," and that is because sometimes we've seen this a lot now with the Michael Jordan documentary. There's a whole bunch of documentaries where the lead of the documentary, the subject, is actually a producer, and this brings us into this weird question of like, well, is that journalism? What is that, or is that just an ad for that person?
Yeah, it's funny too, because you look at something like Still, which was a fantastic Michael J. Fox documentary on Apple TV, but he was an EP on it. How much of it is being told from Michael J. Fox's point of view, and how much of it is being told from an objective point of view? And so Steve and I kind of looked at a number of documentaries and discussed what the angles for them are. And there's no absolutes, no generalizations. It's more a matter of looking at it case by case and what's the right path forward. And we say this, Steve, as a trailer for Bratz just dropped last week, which is a new Hulu documentary on the Brat Pack, and that is being directed by Andrew McCarthy, who is conducting all the interviews. So on one side, it's great that you're going to get this insider point of view from someone who was in the midst of the Brat Pack, and probably getting the other Brat Pack actors like Demi Moore and Emilio Estevez to open up to them because they trust them. But on the other side, you imagine there are certain things that are going to be skewed or maybe brushed or glossed over or brushed aside or pushed off, because they don't want their subject matter to look that bad, or they might have had some editing control over the whole thing. So it's these conversations that are fun to have when we're looking at documentaries or films like this, and discussing what is the right path forward for them.
Well, and that happens to be one of the topics of the other shorts we have here, which is accuracy in films, which is, what is your responsibility if you're doing something about history, if you're doing something that involves science, if you're doing something that involves facts? What is your responsibility as a filmmaker to the audience in terms of being truthful? Is it just about entertainment? In other words, you just throw out reality and do whatever you want? Or is it really important, particularly with serious issues, to get them right? And I think it's a complicated question, and we had a great conversation about it.
Yeah, 100%. As you said, we do enjoy talking with each other because we don't always come from the same points of views on things. And so it's fun for different perspectives and the experiences we've had. What are our approaches? And both of us are historical buffs. So I think a little bit, much more, I would say, than me, but certainly I love history. And so it's a matter of like, well, what's our personal expectation of a film that's going to tackle a historical moment, event, a war, a country, a person? What is the filmmaker's responsibility, especially nowadays, Steve, when there's so much misinformation out there, when there's so many ways to skew a narrative about a person, an event, a scene, a war, what have you, a controversy, a tragedy, that it becomes even more that the filmmaker has even more responsibility to get it right, and also carries more of the burden of the criticism with their perspective and point of view when tackling a film, whether it be a documentary or a narrative film, a theatrical feature that is fictionalized, or their interpretation of a nonfiction moment fictionalized based on true events.
It's such a complicated question because it's a sliding scale. Like, I think we talk about there's a big difference between, the portrayal of the Battle of Thermopylae in the movie 300.
Yeah.
Nobody is worrying about whether or not that movie is accurate. Obviously, it's not. And yet there are other things where
Yeah.
where we take it very, very seriously, like in Apollo 13, where Ron Howard and
Right.
their crew wanted to make sure to get every single thing right. And
Yes.
both of those are movies we've done on the Cine-Files. Both of those are movies you and I really like,
Yeah.
but they have different standards about accuracy, which sort of brings us, I think, to what are the one other segment we're doing, which is both you and I. We looked over the last year of Cinephile shorts, and both of us immediately said we have to include the piece on the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary and the Sylvester Stallone documentary
Yeah.
because they both spoke so much to us.
100% agreed. Yeah, that was an exciting and fun conversation. And again, the timing of it being dropped as we're about to start our deep dive into Total Recall with Schwarzenegger and possibly doing another Schwarzenegger movie down the road here is a great conversation. And of course, these are heroes. These are heroes for both of us at a time when we were coming up and growing up and during our formative years, and could argue that these two gentlemen challenged us both as lovers of acting and also as lovers of filmmaking and guilty pleasures in that approach to things. And I love that was a fun conversation we had about both of these guys, but also a lot of the incisive, touching, emotionally moving new facts that were revealed in both of those documentaries. I think for us who've been fans for many, many years, we found ourselves surprised by some of the revelations in those documentaries. And I think that led to a very fun conversation for both of us where we kind of stopped being these cinephiles people and became more fans and what our feelings were hearing about these gentlemen and their journeys. And then also as older men looking back and now hearing some of the stories from them and what they experienced and finding even more connection with them because of our own experiences in our own lives.
I think the thing that struck me so much about that conversation
Mm.
was it wasn't just here's the bios of two actor movie star guys that we like a lot.
Right.
What became really interesting is here are two entirely different worldviews. Here's
Yeah.
two entirely different ways of thinking about what success means,
Good point.
about what success is, about how much, like the different mental approach that Arnold had to his career as
Right.
opposed to Sly, and what was motivating them are so different. And I think it just gave a lot. I think honestly, it was a little personal for both of us because I
Yeah.
think both you and I related in different ways to different elements of their journey. And
Yeah.
that's what made that conversation so compelling for me.
And we found ourselves gravitating to one over the other, which I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
was a nice conversation, a nice part of the conversation as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
And finally, it has become a perennial favorite on the Cinephiles that our fans like, essentially, I'm going to say, to torture us, to make
Yeah.
us make
100%.
horrible,
Yes.
horrible decisions and to expose parts of ourselves that we don't want to. And that is the section that we will end this compilation with, which is FMK. And for
Yeah.
those of you who don't know what an FMK is, well, I guess you're going to have to listen and find out because it is basically us having to choose which one of our beloved children we must kill at any possible moment or
Yes.
be trapped with for the rest of our lives is very, very difficult.
Or have a one night stand with. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And there are fun conversations within that short as well, and great suggestions from some of our fans. And we actually did something unique where we took the FMK and went to the next level in deciphering the choices that were laid out to us within a particular email that I thought was a fun exploration. And then we challenged each other with some impromptu FMKs on the spot that I thought would led to some fun conversations within that short as well. So a lot for you all to enjoy. It's like, you can get a glimpse into Steve and I from the conversations we have about these topics, but FMK is where Steve and I kind of sit back, relax, and really just kind of come back to being friends shooting the shit about something like this and actually getting our real emotions and our love of these movies put out there very nakedly. So we decide for ourselves what we really feel about these films, and it's a great way to kind of peek behind the curtain on both of us and how we approach our fandom as film lovers.
And this is just a small sample of everything you will get if you are either a subscriber at patreon.com/the Cinephiles, where there's also, in addition to our shorts and ad-free versions of the show, we have combined versions where we have, if it's a three-parter, we'll put it all together as one. We have our advisory board meetings. We have opportunities for you to ask questions that can
Yeah.
be part of our regular episodes. We release our schedule every month, so you know what's coming, unless things change, which they frequently do. And of course, on Apple Podcast, there's one subscription level which gives access to these shorts. There's hundreds of them now, and also to ad-free versions of the show. Those are both great ways that you can support the Cine-Files.
Absolutely. We love doing these shorts, and we thank every single patron who takes advantage of these tiers that allow them to send in the suggestions, because they are fun, they are challenging, they're thought-provoking. And at the end of the day, all the suggestions are super enjoyable, which is why we love diving into them. And dare I say, you help Steve and I discover even more about each other, which furthers our friendship, deepens our friendship, and allows us to connect to you all even more in an interactive way by answering your questions and your suggestions, especially with those FMKs.
And so thank you, all of our patrons, for all of your support. And I think without further ado, we will bring you the Cinephile Shorts. Hello and welcome to another edition of Cinephile Shorts. I am Steve Morris, here with my partner, John Rocha.
Hello.
And I have to say, John, that you and I are partners. We've worked together. We've sometimes been competitive. We've sometimes, found a lot in common. And I think this relates in many ways to two of the great competitors of all time. And I'm not going to say which one of us is which, but two people that have competed and then worked together in the film world, just both had documentaries made about them. And they are Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, both on Netflix. One was a series with multiple episodes, and one was like a 90 to 100-minute documentary about himself. And they were both such interesting films or shows and films to watch, because for me, who is an avid, and you know this, I'm an avid Schwarzenegger and Stallone fan, to sit there and even get some even more information about both of these guys, considering how much I've devoured over the years, whether it be those news magazine puff pieces, or their own, like Arnold has a podcast now, or Stallone's interviews, or, and I've been lucky to interview Stallone. I've never met Schwarzenegger, but just being there and watching this stuff, I was really surprised at how much I came away from both of those documentaries, like respecting and loving these guys even more, despite some of the self-aggrandizement that they do in both of those, in both the series and the movie. Yeah.
You know what's crazy, by the way, and I believe I just noticed it, and it's slightly out of focus, but I believe that on the bookcase behind you, I am looking at Arnold's face.
Yes, it is the new book. I picked it up. I got it for my birthday from the Outlaw's sister. Be useful, 7 tools for life. So I've been going through some stuff lately, transitioning, not physically, but transitioning mentally and there's nothing wrong with that. Just transitioning mentally to embrace doing more with what I'm doing and becoming happy again, because I feel like I'm stuck a little bit right now. And so I saw this book and I'm like, I got to have this thing, and let's see if there's anything in here for me. And I've been enjoying it, and I've been listening to his podcast as well. So, yeah.
You know what's interesting, and it's funny, we sometimes talk more about how we're going to do a particular short or what we want to cover, and we really kind of jumped in on this, and something just occurred to me, and I'm not going to say that this is the only thing we should talk about, but it occurred to me that both of these guys, I think for both of us, at different times and in different ways, have been inspirations.
100%.
Like, I know that you said that you got Arnold's book when you were, getting bullied at school, and that's when you started lifting weights.
The weightlifting book, yes.
And for me, it was the same thing. I saw Pumping Iron, and that's when I said, we went to a garage sale and there was a weight set for like, $3.50. And that's when I started lifting weights, knowing I didn't even know enough to get the book. I just started doing what I thought I had seen, and so that was certainly inspirational. And there is, to me, I mean, the original Rocky might be the most inspirational movie, period, for me.
Oh, yeah. I think for a lot of us of a certain age, Steve, within 5 years of each other, the Rocky series is a very inspirational and influential thing. If you dialed into the Rocky series, you in essence can watch yourself growing up and the country growing up through the different installments. And so there's a sense of, and this is ironic because I've never thought of him as Americana, yet how can it not be Americana? It's
Totally.
just Americana in a different format. It's not Americana in the Midwest with the feeling of, the down home city in Kansas. This is the city Americana. And that's what Stallone kind of represents with Rocky in this Philadelphia story is this person who is counted out and thought to be lesser than, but as an underdog finds his way to the mountaintop and learns how to stay there, learns that it's not easy. And so there's so much that we all kind of aspire to achieve. And his story, both the Rocky story and Stallone's story, have a lot of similarities that we enjoyed connecting with as we watched the series.
For me, I had read Arnold's autobiography. So there were fewer surprises for me watching, and I feel like I had a better sense of who Arnold was having read the autobiography and the interviews. And of course he was governor, and it's like, I felt like I got it more, and there were more revelations for me. I didn't know as much about Stallone. I really didn't know about the stuff with his father. I mean, and what was so interesting, and why I think it's interesting talking about them together, is Arnold is a planner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Arnold is like, this is my goal. I will look at what steps are necessary to achieve my goal, and I will methodically execute on those steps.
Yeah.
Whereas Stallone, it's passion,
Yeah.
It's like Stallone. And this is the big thing is like, the epiphany I had, and I'm curious of what you'll think about this statement. This is what hit me in thinking about these two men, is that Arnold wants to win.
Yeah.
Stallone has something to prove.
Right. Two different things, 100%, because they both came from two different situations. Schwarzenegger came from a home that was loving and his parents cared about him. And he had this just insane belief in himself that he was going to achieve something incredible. It did mean, as you saw in the series, that he didn't have setbacks. He didn't fail at times. And whatever. But he was a guy who came from a place of feeling loved and feeling appreciated and supported. And he broke rules and he snuck out and he, really at times risked his being put in jail in his native Austria for sneaking off to do these competitions. Stallone comes from a broken house with an abusive father, an abusive mother, you would say, emotionally and psychologically. And he is hard scrabble. So it's he's just as determined as Schwarzenegger, but in a different way. He's coming, as you said, from a place of I'll show you versus you're going to see. And there's the two different things in approaches. And I kind of like that, which is why I also think they're such good friends now, because even though they were such enemies back in the 1980s, because each one saw the other one as the main antagonist to them achieving what they spent their whole life trying to achieve. And once they both achieved it to a certain level, they were able to let that stuff go and appreciate each other's drive for achieving the things that they have achieved.
Well, and I think that there are things that Arnold could do with his mindset that Stallone wouldn't have been capable of doing.
Yeah, agreed.
And there are heights that Stallone could reach with his passion and his artistry that Arnold could never get to. And this is because I felt like for Arnold, it was very much seemed like a game. You know what I mean? A game that he wanted to win, and he would have setbacks, and then he would make adjustments. And there was always I know it's just a ridiculous story, but when I first saw Pumping Iron, when I was 11 or 12 or something like that, and he says the line about, when you get the pump on, it feels like you're coming. And like that thing, I remember hearing that as a pubescent boy and going, really? And then years later, him saying, and he says it in the documentary, it's like, no, I just said that I knew we needed to get something that was going to that people were going to notice.
Right.
And then he thinks it's hilarious that bodybuilders would go after him, and they would even say the same thing. Oh yeah, it does. It was like it's like the emperor has no clothes. Is that nobody could admit the fact that they didn't feel that way, so they repeated this thing, and he was like, "No, I made that up. That's not true. What lifting weights is hard and it hurts." But the thing is, or the way that he would fuck with Lou Ferrigno, or all those things where it's like. He didn't mean any of it. He is playing a game, and he is learning how these are and then he goes like, I want to be an actor. Well, therefore I must do these things, and these are the steps, and this is how I'm going to win at acting. This is how I'm going to win it as governor. Whereas Stallone is compelled emotionally because he has story to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would compare them also. Like if you were to compare Michael Jordan to Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan is Stallone and Magic Johnson is Schwarzenegger, because Jordan was cut from his junior varsity team.
Right.
Jordan wasn't even the star of North Carolina. It wasn't until he got to the NBA that he actually led a team with the Bulls. But he was determined to prove to people who he was. And with Magic, Magic was lauded from the beginning. He played mind games with everybody and got to his position. Then he had to understand what it was like to take on that responsibility and all the missteps, and then all the successes and all of that, and where it led to. So those you can make a modern comparison, or you can make an NBA comparison to those guys, and it's the same kind of process. And I think what you said earlier is 100% right, Steve. I mean, I didn't know that Schwarzenegger was buying property in the fucking 1970s, right? 1980s. That's genius. And that's the difference. I think they're both smart. I think Schwarzenegger is a genius in a lot of ways, as you said, with the, understanding, hey, I'm a nobody. People don't know me outside the world of professional bodybuilding. Let me say something that's going to appeal to a mainstream audience, take a chance, and say that weightlifting is like sex. Stallone completely differently sees it from another place. You didn't hear about him buying property or getting ahead of himself or anything. No. His was very singular in what he was trying to do. But I think he's the better actor. Without
question, absolutely.
And I think Schwarzenegger is more cerebral about the world. I think Stallone is more cerebral as a creative. And those are the differences, I think, between the two guys. You're not going to see Copland from Schwarzenegger. No. And he's tried drama. It is mostly painful, sometimes cool, but Stallone has almost always nailed his drama stuff along with his action movie hero stuff. And even in the documentary, he says, like, I didn't set out to be an action star. That happened to me by accident. Whereas Schwarzenegger absolutely set out to be a movie star. And that was the difference between the two guys.
I totally agree. And I think the idea, it's like Stallone's an actor, like he wants to experience emotion and to show truth and emotional truth, and to dig deep into himself and to reveal things.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger wanted to be a movie star.
Exactly.
Like that. And he found, I think, through attrition almost, like a narrow section in which it works. Like Stallone as Schwarzenegger as the big action hero, as Conan, as those characters works.
Right.
Then he finds Terminator, where again, it's narrow. But within that narrow thing, there is nobody else that could do what Schwarzenegger could do.
Right.
And then with the Ivan Reitman movies, he finds out he's funny, but it's not like you could put him into another part. Whereas Stallone, if he hadn't been a big movie star and had Rocky and Rambo, he could have been an actor that was a supporting actor and been really, really good in a whole bunch of stuff.
Right. Right. And I think also, like what I just mentioned earlier, which is interesting too, is like, there's no story where Stallone got the best of Schwarzenegger and tricked him into doing a movie. Whereas the legendary story they tell in the Schwarzenegger series is how Schwarzenegger tricks Stallone, in essence, to take Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. That tells you the difference between the two guys. And Stallone was never good at comedies. Oscar, I know there are people who defended it. Certainly there's funny moments, but it's not that good of a movie. Rhinestone is terrible. Stop or My Mom Will Shoot is terrible. He has comedic moments in his action movies like Demolition Man or whatever, or Tango and Cash, but he is not a good comedic actor, whereas Schwarzenegger has more of the natural instincts for comedy. So it's just fascinating to look at these guys.
I actually think this is I agree, and it's a fascinating exploration, really,
Mm.
because Sylvester Stallone personally is really funny.
Yes.
I actually think that personally he's probably funnier than Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
But Arnold found a way. He found a narrow lane in which he is hilarious in Twins and Kindergarten Cop and movies like that,
Yeah.
which Schwarzenegger can't do, or which Stallone can't do. I keep saying the wrong name. The other thing I think is that when you look at Rocky, it is his heart that he's opening up,
Yeah,
because as we talked about when we did the movie, it is his struggles as an actor, his struggles as a person, his wanting to prove himself to a father figure like
Right.
Mickey. All of those things he is transposing into the world of boxing and Rocky Balboa.
Right.
And that is what makes it great. You don't have any of Arnold's heart. You know what I mean? I mean, like, ever. I mean, I don't think there's a single movie. I mean, it's not that he
Yeah.
hasn't had any emotion ever in his films,
Right.
but you don't go like, I think I'm really seeing the real guy in Predator. I mean, that's not what's happening, you know?
No, I agree. And like I said, when he's done those drama things like Maggie and a couple of these other films, he doesn't quite get there. You're championing him, you're cheering for him, you want him to get there, but I don't think he's capable of it. And I think what you said way at the beginning of this conversation is the correct analysis. To him, it's all a game.
Yeah.
So if it's all a game, you really can't have too much emotion involved in the whole situation because it is a game. Whereas Stallone sees it as life or death, which is why he pours out so much of his heart into the things he creates. And also, he's a writer. Schwarzenegger's not a writer. Right. And that's another part of it as well, that Stallone made his bones as an actor and writer at the same time, and then eventually a director, actor, writer as well. So there's a different approach, a different pursuit. So you see that in their another one of their differences amidst their similarities as well.
Well, and as when we talked about Rambo, in First Blood, when we did that film, like, what is it that Stallone contributes? Well, he contributes his humanity, you know? Right. Like, that's what elevates that movie from the book is the choices that he made about how he makes it personal and reducing his lines and reshaping that character from being just the killing machine into being this person who doesn't want to kill, and all of the pain that he brings in. That's what makes that a great movie, you know?
Yeah, when you look at the documentary on him, his was the most, to me, revelatory in terms of what I saw. I had no idea about the polo thing with him.
That story, I was what I was just going to bring up, man. That story fucked me up.
I mean, you think anybody listening, or me and Steve, we think we have competitive fathers. That is a competitive father. Dude. All the way to the end. And then the colossal mindfuck of like, maybe you should forgive and embrace people more. It's like, wait, what? You sack of shit. So, this was an incredible thing to watch as kind of as an arc through the movie, through this documentary, was his relationship with his father, the polo thing. And then, of course, the battle. I mean, his father saying, I could write just as good as him. Here, why don't you produce my script? Going behind his back to have his friend, Stallone's friend, try to produce his play, and then try to claim that he's the one that came up with Rocky. He wrote the original Rocky. It's like this really weird type of situation when you look at it. And Schwarzenegger has none of that. None of that. He's very clear about where he's going and what is going on. And no one is even remotely trying to do that to him because they're so intimidated by him and his brains. And I think that's what makes the difference there.
First of all, I have known many fucked up dads.
Yes.
And you have known many fucked up dads, but trying to take credit for Rocky writing his competition, and then the whole polo thing is so bizarre because it's polo is the richest, most elitist sport there is. And then you go like, Stallone's dad was good at, wow, it's so bizarre. And then the story he tells of, and I don't remember exactly what the circumstances are, but basically that he was really good at polo, played with his dad, and then his dad was such a dick that he never played polo again.
It was for a charity event after Stallone had become a very famous actor, and he asked his dad to come play with him. And he thought his dad would have his back because these guys might try to hurt him because they're jealous of his success. And it was his dad who ended up hurting him by tricking him into a move and hurt his back. And Stallone, after that, sold all his horses, sold all the polo stuff, and never played polo again because I think it triggered in him the betrayal of his father. So every time he probably thought about polo, he thought about how his father had betrayed him. So it really was revelatory to see that in the film.
Well, and my feeling, and I don't know what your reaction was, but
Mm.
watching Stallone tell that story, it was just as fresh and just as painful. And he's not past that,
No.
you know?
No.
And again, this is the contrast with Arnold is that Arnold, I mean, his dad was a drinker. Like
Right.
it doesn't sound like his dad was, and his dad was a former Nazi. So like,
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
and his dad obviously was dealing with pain from the war and it sounds like his dad was, the Teutonic, no
Right.
emotions, not expressing a thing.
Right.
And Arnold is not suffering from any of that.
No. No.
Like he's like, I understand who my dad was. And his dad wasn't always great to him, and he understands it, and he feels sympathy for it, and he knows how to move past it.
Right.
And it's interesting because like some of the stuff Arnold did, it's interesting hearing the way he talks about the sexism, the way he talks about the affair and fathering the other child out of wedlock and his marriage. It was fucking mature, and I was really impressed with the way Arnold. Like, we've talked in other conversations about, is there a way to apologize?
Right.
Like, is there a way where someone who has done something wrong can actually say the right thing and we can go, okay. And I firmly believe we have to have pathways to apology because we got to be able to do this. And I think Arnold was a really good model of saying, this is what I thought at the time. This was my behavior at the time. It took me a long time to learn why that behavior was wrong. This is what I did in my marriage. This is what I did to my family. I am entirely responsible for it. I care so much about it. It was a really solid sort of, and this is where I am now. That's how I felt.
It's fascinating because I think what you bring up about the Stallone side of things is like he's still carrying that anger towards his dad. So you have to ask yourself, has he done any therapy around this? Whereas when you hear Schwarzenegger, who I would think wouldn't have done any therapy, the way he's speaking about it, it's very clear that he has done some level of therapy or spoken with people who have kind of laid things out, maybe friends of his who are psychiatrists or psychologists or have gone through stuff. They have conversations with him and make him see certain things, And I agree with you, Steve, because, we have to create space for how things were back then. And this is not excusing anything, but certainly sometimes you're taught certain things, you're taught to be a certain way, to be aggressive, to go after what you want, these kinds of things. You see it in the media, you see it in the movies, you're influenced by that. But there has to be space for you to realize after the Me Too movement, oh hey, that really wasn't the best thing to do, that really wasn't a right thing to do, and I own that, and I'm sorry about that. And I hope, and as he said, I hope I hope they can forgive me and move on from it and move past it. And so I agree with you. It was a very mature way to handle it. Other people might complain that it wasn't enough, but you can't control how someone apologizes to you. You just have to see if there's sincerity. And it did feel like there was sincerity from him. Whereas Stallone, there's no conversation about, the way he treated Brigitte, the way there were some issues around his previous relationships. There's none of that. It's a different approach, So it's another thing that was interesting to see.
Well, I think we've done the films of the 70s where people were doing a lot of stuff where they were saying like, here's the truth, here is emotion, and I think when you swim in the waters that Stallone was, I'm not excusing bad behavior in any way, but it's like we just did. There was a movie we just did where someone. An actor hit an actress, and what was it that we just
did? Ooh,
it's pretty recent, and we were comparing it to the Godfather 2 hit. And I don't remember what it was, but it's like remember. Now I can't remember either. We've clearly done a lot of movies where I can't even remember what we did.
Kramer versus Kramer and Godfather Part 2 are the two most famous ones. Oh, Tootsie. Was it Tootsie?
No, it wasn't that. Okay. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, the reason I brought the whole thing up is like, when you're going into the world of, well, this is going to be real. And clearly Rocky is going into an area where this is going to be real, and you're that kind of actor where, Stallone wants to really experience it. He wants to, he has Dolph Lundgren to push him in the chest and that sent him, he almost killed him, Like he wants things to be real. And when you're doing that kind of thing, it means your behavior is the emotions are all on the surface, and you're just going to do stuff, whereas the calculating Schwarzenegger, like I'm fascinated by, he doesn't win. There was some competition early on that he doesn't win. And then he learns a lesson and comes back. And then there's, he's trying to be an actor and it's just like, of course you'll never be an actor. You can't do it. And he figures things out. And then even in the campaign for governor, there's like moments where he's really flails. And when he's governor, he like realizes, oh, I can't do it this way. And he makes adjustments, but they're all, as you said at the beginning, they're all sort of cerebral adjustments. He goes they're all gamesmanship. Like, okay, well that doesn't work. So now I will do this. That's not what Stallone's doing at all,
And most of the times when he makes a change, it's, as you said, cerebral, but it's also gutsy. They're gutsy changes. They're risky
absolutely
changes. And so he's not just going, I'm going to play it safe now. I'll do what everyone else is doing. No, I'm going to adjust it so that I meet the needs of a majority of people, but I'm going to do it my way. So it's still me. So, which I thought was great. Yeah.
Well, I think that's something we could probably say about both of them is that both of them are making, I mean, it's like we can say that maybe Expendables 4 is not a gutsy choice, for Stallone. But in general,
that's money.
Like, going into First Blood and Rocky, like he wanted to be out there. Well, and even things that didn't succeed that as well, like Fist and, some of those earlier things, it's still him making gutsy choices.
Yeah, that's what I've always admired about both of them. I think with Schwarzenegger, the gutsiness is more outside the world of film. I think I more admire his willingness to challenge himself in the world of film, but his gutsiness outside the world of film in pursuing these ventures and opening the doors for these possibilities and creating multiple revenue streams for himself, that's what impresses me. Whereas Stallone, the gutsiness he shows within the films he takes on, and I mean, Fist, as you said, it was a horrible failure for him, but it was really one of the most Sylvester Stallone movies that you're ever going to see, showing his feelings about unions, about the working man, about fighting against corruption and all of that. And a proclivity to kill himself off, which of course was something that he explored in Rocky V as a possibility, and Rambo, which he's explored a number of times. So there is a desire to be this heroic martyr within Stallone, and it comes through in his characters every time.
I've been debating whether or not I was going to return to the statement I made early on in this short, which is, and I think the answer, not that it's a one-to-one comparison, not that it's exactly the same, but in the partnership of the Cine-Files, who is the Schwarzenegger and who is the Stallone, I think is obvious.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's fair. 100% fair, but no less determined and no less driven, which is, I think, also
both
important.
Totally driven and determined. Yes. And of course, and like I said, I'm not exactly Arnold, clearly, and you are not exactly Stallone,
clearly.
But I think that those are the areas in which we're kind of operating.
Exactly. The sensibilities, yes, for sure.
So this is a conversation that I didn't know quite where it was going to go, but I'm really glad we've had it. And we would love to hear from you, our patrons. Have you watched these two documentaries? What did you think about them? Did they change the way you saw Arnold and Sly? Did you learn new things? Are you a fan of either? And who do you feel most like? Are you more of a Schwarzenegger or are you more of a Stallone? We'd love to hear all of that. And of course, thank you very much for your support. As we say every single time, we could not make the Cine-Files without you. And for my partner, John Rocha, I'm Steve Morris, and we will see you on another Cine-Files Short. Hello and welcome to another edition of Cine-Files Shorts. My name is Steve Morris, here with my trusty partner, John Rocha.
Hello.
And today's suggestion comes from advisory board member Brennan Marr, who says, "Hi, John and Steve. I was wondering what your thoughts were on accuracy in movies, whether we're talking about historical or scientific or otherwise kinds of accuracy. When do films have the responsibility to get things right versus artistic expression? A few years ago, there was a movie called Tully, which had a very inaccurate depiction of postpartum blues. For me, when you're dealing with a very important topic like postpartum depression or even something harrowing like the Holocaust, you have the responsibility to be accurate so the audience doesn't get the wrong idea. But as it is, this is a very fine line, as a film must also be an artistic expression." So, John,
yeah,
what do you think? Do we care about accuracy? Can we throw facts out the window? What's your feeling here?
I mean, I think it's all case by case basis, right? As I'm getting older, I realize that generalizations are no longer useful to my existence. And so I feel like I've defaulted to a generalized belief that it's all on a case by case basis, right? Like we watch Zone of Interest. None of that is based on anything we've actually witnessed or anyone really knew about, or it's the director's idea of what happened in this house. I think it's based on the novel as well. So in this house here, and what it would be like to be next to a concentration camp. So we didn't see any of the deaths of Jewish people. We heard it, and we heard occasional rumblings over the wall and things like that. And we saw some of the Jewish people who were imprisoned there coming in as like servants or maids or cleaning up the house. So we saw that. But what's the accuracy there? The only accuracy is that there was a concentration camp in Auschwitz. These people lived outside the concentration camp on the other side of the walls and had lives. That was basically but everything else is an embellishment, is a fantastical approach to it. And I will say this. So to me, it's always a case by case basis, and it all depends on the artist. But I will take a little bit of umbrage with Brennan's portrayal of Tully, because I've spoken to a lot of women who felt that Tully was a very accurate depiction of postpartum depression. Not necessarily that you create a fantasy person, which I don't mean to spoil it for people, but it is absolutely a topic that is rarely covered in film. And quite a number of women I've spoken to who've had children told me that it is a very accurate depiction of the depression, of the sadness, of the overwhelming grief that comes on, that is not necessarily directed at the child, but more just a matter of a hormonal thing or emotional thing or body chemistry thing that affects certain women. So I don't know. I don't agree with Brennan's characterization there, but it's a valid question about when we should be accurate versus giving into artistic expression. What about you, Steve? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, your answer to the question really, for me, brings up a whole other question, because I think we have to figure out what we mean by being accurate.
Yeah.
Because for me, Zone of Interest, my guess is that movie is exceptionally accurate. My guess is that they did tremendous amounts of research. I bet they looked at every piece of clothing, every single thing they ate, the way the house was decorated. Yeah. Like my guess, and I don't know this for a fact at all, my guess is that they knew what, I forget the name of the colonel who's in charge of Auschwitz at the time, but my guess is they knew his exact schedule. They knew the day that he left for Berlin for that meeting. My guess is they worked really hard on accuracy. Yeah. But then what you say is true, is that we're not really seeing anything about what's going on in Auschwitz. We're not. Right. There's all sorts of things that aren't included. And then the thing about like your description of Tully, which I've never seen, but what you were responding to is this emotionally accurate?
Yes.
And that's a different thing from, is it factually accurate? And I think this is central to filmmaking, because to answer the question, at least a little bit, I agree with you. This is a case-by-case basis. There's no way to generalize about it. I firmly believe that the first job of a film is to entertain. Yeah. And if you didn't entertain, all the accuracy in the world doesn't matter. Right. Because nobody's going to come to see your fucking movie. On the other hand, there are things where it is a real betrayal of actual humans to not actually do things in the correct way. And where that line happens, it's like, so one example would be, in any movie based on a real story, you have to combine characters, and you have to combine events. And we talked a lot about this with Wolf of Wall Street, where there's the whole sequence leading up to the Quaaludes and all that stuff, which is really different characters at different times and different people sort of plugged in together to get a whole bunch of things all out at the same time. Yeah. Like the Quaalude thing didn't happen at the same time as him saving a guy's life. And those people that it happened with weren't the same people, Yeah. And so they combine, and I have no problems with that whatsoever. But then then there are other things, like we talked about Braveheart, where you and I both love Braveheart. Yeah. That is a fantastic movie. It has very little to do with what actually happened. And then it's sort of like, okay, you made a great film. It made me feel all these things, and that's awesome. Yeah. Is that can I say that's a bad thing? Because in fact, whatever this battle was didn't happen anything like this. And the princess was actually not even born when this was going on. And like none of those things are correct. And so I don't know how to navigate that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There are certain things I think you have to be, like, let's say you're doing a moon landing, thing on the moon landing. Okay, you've got to make sure they land on this particular date, and that they, do the things that they're supposed to do on the moon landing that we know historically happened. Unless you believe that Kubrick filmed it, then that's a whole other conversation. But we've got to do those things. But I think it's all a matter of what works for the piece. And as long as you're not offending the people that you are depicting and offending their story, that you're telling their story accurately and getting the spirit. It's about, I guess that's, as we're talking, that's what I stumble upon. It's, do you get the spirit and the essence of the story correct? Do you get the message of what the story is supposed to be about? Do you get that correct when you're translating that from something that is real onto a theatrical adaptation? Are you getting the essence and the spirit of the person's real life story or the people's real life stories correct? And that's really what it comes down to. Because I mean, I could probably watch Michael Collins with someone who lived through the Michael Collins era with some Irish person, and they would probably be like, "That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. That never happened. Those people were running. No, it was completely different than what you're seeing here." But what's the spirit of the movie? Even though it's not that good of a movie, what's the spirit of the movie? It's the defiance. It's the desire for self-determination. It's the fight to be able to feel like you have the freedom in the world to not be colonized. And so you get that sense, that vibe here with that movie, whether it's good or not. So that's what's important, And so I think it's always a matter of, do you honor the spirit of the truth of the story in telling the story? Then you've done the right thing. Because, like you said, Steve, you're going to always change characters around or make an amalgamation or whatever. Like Patriots Day is a great example. Like Mark Wahlberg's character never existed in real life, but in that story, right? He is a amalgamation of a bunch of different characters, or real people rather, all into one person. And he essentially became a Boston Forrest Gump, who was at all these critical moments of this entire situation, but no one was at all those critical moments in the whole situation with the Boston bombing, the marathon bombing, and all of that. So I think in that way, in that respect, you can criticize a film, but the film overall was good. So was that a negative thing to do? I would say no. Other people might say yes.
Well, and in that case, you've created a fictitious thing in order to tell a whole bunch of truth that you couldn't get to any other way.
Right.
Without that thing, we couldn't have gotten through that film and seen all these things that did happen. I mean, to me, this is why it, as you said right at the beginning, there's no way to generalize about this.
Yeah.
You look at a movie like 300, that is not what happened at the Battle of Thermopylae. I mean, like, there weren't giants and mutants and huge elephants and whatever, all the craziness, because that's 300. And the thing with 300 is, I doubt there's anybody watching that goes, "I learned some history today, boy. I really figured some stuff out." But then you go to Gladiator, and in Gladiator, where they have like machine gun crossbows and things popping out of the ground, and there's things where it's like, okay, they kind of made that up. Like that's not that, and that movie, I think, is far more likely that people are going to watch and go, "Oh, I know what the history of Rome was like." And it's like, well, you know more than you learned from 300, probably. Although 300, if the center of the story of 300 was about 300 heroic people defending this thing and losing their lives against a vast army, emotionally, you totally got that. You know? And this is where we go. There's sort of different approaches to different things. And the fact is, if you and I took a quiz on British history, and in it there were a bunch of things that were from Shakespeare and a bunch of things that were from true history, well, you and I would probably get some stuff wrong because we learned a lot of British history from Shakespeare.
100%. Or from watching movies about it.
Exactly.
They've changed some certain things with chronological events, or as you say, combined characters or what have you. Yes, 100%. Even something like Oppenheimer, right? Which just came out. Just won the Oscar rather, but came out last year. There are numerous people who go through that movie and go, "That's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong." They really minimize the contribution of all that team of scientists. We barely got to know Thora Birch's character, and apparently she was massive in the creation of both the bombs. And we barely get to know some of these other scientists that were a part of this and their full contributions, because there's not enough time. Because even in the 3-hour movie, there's not enough time to focus on all of them and how much they contributed to the creation of the bomb. So is the film inaccurate or dishonoring the spirit of it all? No, because the point of the movie is to show how government can interfere in a person's life to indulge a personal grudge. Or the other side of it is it shows us the consequences of egotistical pursuit of success and egotistical pursuit of accomplishment, and what it can lead to and the danger of what it can lead to. So there's so many messages coming out of that movie. So is that get deterred because you didn't spend more time really fleshing out what actually happened in the creation of the bomb? I would say no.
Well, I think that's a great point, and it's like, if you think about how many complicated themes there are in that movie,
Yeah.
there are just as many complicated themes that aren't in that movie.
Mm.
But that to me is not like, that was always the lightest criticism. It's like, look, you haven't made if you haven't made a movie and tried to fit everything into 2 hours or 3 hours, you don't understand. I can't put everything in. That's not possible.
Yeah.
But if I tried to put everything in, again, we go against my first rule, which is, first it has to entertain. Like,
Yes.
this movie is not a vehicle for all of this information.
Right.
That being said, I also think it's really about the filmmaker, and it's about how they want to see the world. And for me, as a filmmaker, and also as a teacher,
Yeah.
like, I have a certain way that I think. I remember that when we did Apollo 13,
Mhm.
in Apollo 13, they were religious, obsessive about getting everything absolutely perfectly right,
Yep.
to the point where when they had script problems or story problems, they continually went, let's read the transcripts again.
Yeah.
And and by reading the transcripts and finding out more facts and interviewing more people, they found ways to make the movie better. And that, for me, that's how I think about things. And so I am frustrated with filmmakers, even great filmmakers.
Yeah.
And last year we did a season of Tarantino, and you heard me do this all the time, which is, I was continually like, couldn't you have done a little fucking research? Like, come on, you're a genius, you're an incredible filmmaker, but maybe you would have found something better in the truth than you got from making stuff up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain point where I get really frustrated because I love history. And
Yeah.
so it's who I am as a filmmaker, and who I am, I would say, as a teacher of filmmakers,
Yeah.
is like, I care about the truth more than some great filmmakers out there who really, really don't.
Excellent point, Steve. You're 100% right. I totally agree with you there.
Well, I can't think of a better place to end a Cinephile short than on me being 100% right. I think this is like the first time ever
Oh,
in
come
the Cinephiles. But thank you, Brendan. Certainly, you were right that this was a great subject for a Cinephile short. And of course, we appreciate everybody listening here on Patreon, and we appreciate our new subscribers through our Apple Podcast feed. Thank you so much. We could not make the Cine-Files without you. And for my partner, John Rocha, I am Steve Morris, and we will see you on another Cinephile short.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Cinephile Shorts here from the Cinephiles. I am the outlaw John Rocha, joined as always by my co-host there, noted documentarian Steve Morris.
I didn't know I was noted. Who noted me? That's exciting.
Well, I bring that up because we have a great question here from one of our patrons here, Maxwell Israels. He says, hey guys, had a fantastic time at the meeting yesterday. He's part of our advisory board meetings, advisory board crew. So thank you, Maxwell. So glad I could make it. One idea for a short that just came to me. Not sure when it would fit on the schedule, when it fit now, but I thought I'd share. What do you guys think of documentaries where subjects in them are producers of the documentary? I feel like since The Last Dance, they have become increasingly popular, and Apple TV just got some criticism for how they handled their Patriots documentary. The examples I've seen are more sports related than anything, but do you see any issues with subjects in documentaries shaping the story they tell? Along with that, do you think viewers are getting smarter and noticing when documentaries are told through that lens? So, Steve, you've had a number of experience creating documentaries, directing documentaries, voicing over documentaries, shooting and editing documentaries. So, what are your thoughts on the question here from Maxwell Israels?
It's so funny because as I read the question, I went, oh, well, there's some real ethical conundrums in there with someone working on a documentary or producing a documentary or having approval on a documentary that's about them. That seems to work against the basic idea of the documentary. And as I'm having this thought, I suddenly went, wait, I've done exactly that because I made a documentary about the Cine-Files.
Yeah.
So that I, in fact,
right.
was the producer and creator, and frankly, had the final cut of a movie that was about us. And so I completely 100% violated exactly the thing. And I knew the whole time. I knew, like, this is a weird thing to be doing. Ethically, it's weird. It was something I wanted to do and felt passionate about, but it was weird, and I totally acknowledge that. So I think what's funny, I think The Last Dance is a fantastic documentary.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it could never have existed without the buy-in from Michael Jordan.
Right.
I also think that there are documentaries which are very clearly hit pieces that don't involve the family or the person that exists, and I have real problems with those.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where it's really about how that deal is negotiated, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
what the subject's feeling about how much freedom the filmmaker has. If they're just doing this to protect their image, I got a real problem with it. If
Right.
they're willing to let the filmmakers go there and explore some stuff, then you can end up with something really good. What's your feeling about it?
Yeah, I mean, with Last Dance seems to have become the touchstone for this conversation because I've heard this in a number of places. So I appreciate Maxwell's question. I agree with you, Steve. I love The Last Dance. I catch myself sometimes like just stumbling upon episodes on Netflix or YouTube or whatever and watching just an episode and going like, wow, like I don't need to watch all 10 of them right when I watch one. Just watching one is enough to go back in time and remember that period. The 90s around the Bulls stuff, that was some great fucking times in America in a lot of ways. And so for me going back to that was like basketball at the height with Jordan, the greatest ever. This combination of marketing and music videos and all. There was so much happening that was uber creative back in the 90s around that time that I thought was a fascinating thing to be on the cusp of. So The Last Dance kind of brings that back for me. So I enjoy rewatching it. But I agree with the concern people have had recently about The Last Dance because Steve, you're right. They shot all that footage, but there's no way they would have put that footage together to create The Last Dance without Michael Jordan's approval. It was necessary. Michael was the person who signed off on it for them to do it. Now you can look at it and go, well, they never talked about his cheating on his wife. They never talked about his other issues. They seem to excuse all the gambling stuff. They seem to excuse the rumors about David Stern possibly kicking him out of the NBA because the gambling problem had gotten too bad. And we're having this conversation as the Ohtani drama is still unfolding there for the Dodgers and all that stuff that went on there with his interpreter. So there was a lot of things that weren't explored from other people's points of views about Jordan that could have been negative. And so some people felt that the documentary was hamstrung by that, which I can understand. But then again, we would have gotten it if we would have gone that route. And nothing says you can't tell a documentary, as Sam Smith proved in the Jordan Rules. You can't tell the story from a negative point of view about Jordan, because certainly there are quite a few players who have some negative points of views about him. That's fine. It's all, again, it's a matter of a case-by-case based situation. What's the point of the documentary? What are you trying to do? I personally like a documentary that does not have the person involved, because you are now free to tell your interpretation of what you think happened here. And hopefully people involved in his life will be willing and freely able to speak their experience around that person. I mean, you could argue that Citizen Kane is a documentary, is essentially because that person does not contribute to the documentary and everyone else's points of views are highlighted with sequences that are essentially treated as flashbacks to this person's life. So for me, when I look at these documentaries, it's all a matter of what's the point of the documentary? Do I trust the documentarian? And are they really telling the full truth of what we're experiencing in these documentaries? And so I think that's the thing at the end of the day that I focus on is, do they get it right? Does it not feel, like you said, like a hit piece? And is it about educating people about this person's life or this particular incident or this series of incidents that happened that are the basis for the documentary?
I think those are great points, and I think it's funny. We didn't plan it in this order for any particular reason, but the last short we just recorded was on historical accuracy in feature films, in narrative films, and this I think connects perfectly with it because. And the thing I just want to point out is that a documentary has so much more opportunity to lie to you than a narrative film.
Yeah.
It's like the narrative film. We know on some level that this is fiction. We know that these are actors. We know that Cillian Murphy is not, in fact, Robert Oppenheimer. We didn't blow up an atomic bomb. We know that this is a movie. When you watch a documentary, you are seeing real footage of the real people. And so we feel that there is way more truth in here when in fact there is way more truthiness.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's so funny. I remember going to see Fahrenheit 9/11, the Michael Moore film.
Yeah, right.
And it was, I think it came out. Yeah, I'm fairly certain it came out right when I was really starting to edit documentaries. And I remember watching the opening, and the opening of that movie is George W. Bush and Rumsfeld and all those people, and they're in the makeup chairs getting made up before going on. And it's sort of off-camera moments where they don't know they're being recorded, and they all look like idiots.
Yeah.
And I remember being so angry watching it And I'm, everyone knows my politics here. Like, I'm on the Michael Moore team in terms of how I felt about the war in Iraq and about the Bush administration.
Yeah.
But I also, as a documentarian, which you so kindly called me, know that everybody looks like an idiot when they're getting their makeup put on. It is meaningless. It is
Oh, yeah.
the power of the documentary. I can make you look like an idiot. That is my power as an editor. And have always felt
Yeah.
that my responsibility, if I'm editing you, and it's exactly how I feel when I'm editing the Cine-Files, it's how I felt when I did the Great White Shark docs, when I did anything that I do,
Yeah.
that my job is to create the best possible version of the subject and the clearest version of exactly what they want to say. So
Yeah.
that, and there have been times where I've texted you while I'm editing. I'm like, do you want it to be like this, or do you want me to take this out, or maybe this, because I want it to reflect the purest version of what you said.
Yes. Which I've
But I
always
could,
appreciated. Yeah.
and you're welcome, but I could easily do the opposite. If I wanted to make you sound dumb or me sound dumb, I could do it. It's easy. It's so, because we're both really smart people who make, a living talking,
Yeah.
but I just could take stuff out. I could put lots of ums in. I could do all sorts of things. And in particular, it's the power of juxtaposition, which means
Yeah.
it's not just what you said, but what image I put next to what you said.
Yeah.
If I take you see this on Fox News, you see this on MSNBC, you see this on the internet constantly. If I take you saying, and I don't mean you, John Rocha, but just anyone saying, I think this is going to be great, which I took that line from wherever the hell I wanted to take it, from whatever context, and I put it next to images of a disaster,
Yeah.
you look like a moron. Not because I think everything's going to be great, could have been something that made perfect sense. And this is what we see all the time. And this is so it's just a big Surgeon General warning of documentaries have so much power to lie to you. And that's why this is important.
Well, and the problem comes to, and look, let me say this: the Patriots documentary that Maxwell referenced, I did a review of it on my channel with Jeff and JTE, who you guys know from the Schmoedown, the Patriots. We had a fun conversation about the first couple episodes of the documentary. As the documentary went along, because I originally planned to do a final review of the entire documentary with JT and Jeff, and it was essentially a hit piece on Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And I thought to myself, this is not something I want to sit and discuss afterwards. So I didn't do it because I thought that it was a documentary that in the end fell short of what I wanted this documentary to be, which was a balance. I like the documentaries that show you the negative stuff and the positive stuff. So you as the viewer can walk away from that documentary having your own personal conversation about where you sit with this person or this series or this team or these people or these events. And I think that's essential. But by the same token, having a person involved doesn't mean you're going to get the full story either. Because as much as you may think the documentarians might be making a hit piece, as you said, Steve, so well, it may be that these people are also wanting to gloss over some of their things and make themselves constantly be the good guy or the good person rather, or the victim, right? Like all these, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but whatever, man. All these Taylor Swift songs, almost none of them are like, I really fucked up. I really did this. Like I shouldn't have, spoke ill of him. I shouldn't have yelled at him. If you listen to all those, she's never started an argument in her entire life. So you see these people who constantly portray themselves as the victim or as the abused party. And I think that's where documentaries can get in trouble. Like I know Madonna's doing a documentary and she's the executive producer, or she's doing a film on herself and another documentary. And I think that's going to blow up in her face. And we're not going to find out the real truth about Madonna. We just had J-Lo do a quote unquote documentary about her life. And she is getting skewered all across social media for her fabrication of her life and the lies, accusations that she was lying about a lot of the things that she claimed were part of her upbringing and were claimed to be part of her life, right? We don't know if she's lying because none of us were in her skin and in her mind as she was experiencing things. They could very well be, from her point of view, this is the truth, but people feel like it's not 100% the truth. So even if the person involved is in the person being profile is involved, does not mean that the documentary is going to end up being this incredible documentary that tells the full truth and you'll get a full picture of the person.
I'm really glad we got to this point in the conversation. It really is like a perfect parallel to the previous conversation about accuracy in film, because what it really is this is actually a question about accuracy and filmmaking
Yeah.
more than it's a question about whether or not the person is involved. Because for me, as you described, the hit piece on Bill Belichick and the Patriots is
Yeah.
just as distasteful as J-Lo, and I haven't seen either of these documentaries, so I'm not speaking
Yeah.
from any personal experience, but someone making what's essentially a marketing ad campaign for their lives, which is a documentary, which I think honestly could be an excellent description of the Cine-Files 200th anniversary spectacular. And it's clearly just a big marketing thing for the Cine-Files.
Right, you didn't hunt out people to be like, this is the worst podcast ever. These guys don't know what the fuck they're
No.
talking about. Right,
I
exactly.
mean, and I'm sure there are people that hate us out there, and I didn't engage in the story at all. Now, what that movie was a celebration of our friendship and of these
Yeah.
people and of people that love movies, and that's what I was trying to show. So I don't think there was a dark side of the Cinephiles I was avoiding, but certainly as the filmmaker and the subject,
Yeah.
like there's a real ethical problem. But I think the more important point is that did you watch the Steve Martin documentary that's on?
Yeah. I'm definitely have that to watch this week. Yeah.
So it's very interesting, and I'd be very curious to hear what your thoughts on are the difference between part one and part two. But what I will say is you can't make that movie without buy-in of Steve Martin, and I really, really liked it. Just as you can't, if you don't have Michael Jordan sitting on that couch with that iPad,
Yeah.
that's like critical to that movie.
Yeah.
You know,
I took that personally. Yeah. You got to have the social media moments that correlate with the documentary if it's going to be a documentary that explodes. And certainly they had that with The Last Dance. And unfortunately, they had that with the J-Lo documentary because they're taking clips that are social media, that are being a big part of social media. And they're taking those clips, and it's the same clip over and over again in a lot of instances, and just absolutely skewering her for it. So, those are those things you look at when you're doing a documentary, But one thing that I'm really proud of is when I started doing the deep cut at Collider, which unfortunately I wasn't able to continue doing after I left Collider, was that I got to interview a bunch of documentarians because I felt like we weren't covering documentaries on the channel and we weren't covering documentaries on the website as strongly as we could have been. And so I got to interview the people who made Apollo 11,
Yeah, I remember
American Factory, the Imelda Marcos documentary that came out a couple of years ago. Like, it was fascinating to talk to documentarians about how they approach making their documentaries, and all of them were distinctly different documentaries. The Mike Wallace documentary, like, there were so many great documentaries, and it was a joy to watch the documentaries and then interview the directors and ask them their process, because it's something that fascinates me and how they put it together. And each one of them had completely different approaches to how they put these documentaries together and how they did all these things that they did, that I thought was thrilling and intellectually engaging and artistically exciting to listen to as well. So yeah, there's a lot of great documentaries out there, and I think there's a lot of people doing great documentary work. But everyone has their process, and everyone has a different approach of what they're trying to say and how much they want the subject of the documentary to be involved.
I think that's a great point, and I think just to point out, when you sit down to make a narrative film, in general, you have a script, and this is the story that you're going to tell, and then you go out and gather exactly the things that you want, and you put them together. And yes, it might not end up being in exactly the order or exactly the way it was in the script, because things changes in the editing room. We obviously know that.
Yeah.
But that is so different from I have a person's entire life, or I have an incredibly complicated event, and I have thousands of hours of footage. I mean, I remember this because one of my editing teachers was the guy who edited Hoop Dreams.
Oh,
And
nice.
that's who I really learned how to edit documentaries from. And they had, so I believe your average, there's what you call the shooting ratio.
Yeah.
So it's like I have a 2-hour movie and I shot 80 hours. So the assistance was like 50 or 60 hours of footage to make a 2-hour movie.
Mm-hmm.
The first shark doc I did was 250 hours of footage to make a 1-hour movie.
Oh, wow.
Apocalypse Now, I think it's in my notes somewhere long and long ago, but I think it's like 600 hours of footage to make a 3-hour movie.
Right.
Hoop Dreams is like 4,000 hours of footage
To make that 3-hour movie. Yeah.
That's so the when you say that everyone's approach is different, everyone's approach is going to be real different. And here I kind of have thought of like some rules of this is what I would say, which is like, so first of all, if you only want to do a hit piece, and you have no intention of changing your point of view or learning anything through the course of your documentary, I have a problem with the way you're making your documentary.
Yeah.
And I have the exact same problem with if you want to do a isn't this person awesome and they're involved in it
Yeah.
and you have no desire to look at anything negative or anything critical or dig deeper or even be surprised in an interview,
Mhm.
then I have a real problem with that too. Is
Yeah.
that it's somewhere in the middle of like you have to be willing to let the documentary be what it is and
Mhm.
learn from it. And so if you know, if the outlaw came to me and said, Steve, I want you to do the outlaw story, you and I would have a heart to heart about
Yeah.
like, look, I can't, I love you and I want to tell your story and I want to do a great job telling your story, but I can't do this job unless you give me some freedom as a director to explore some things that I'm going to explore.
I think I'd have to, and I think I'd be one of those people that'd be okay with that. Like, I don't think a lot of people are okay with having their story told with the negative and the positive all involved, because I'm a naturally curious person. So I would want to see what other people thought about my journey and see their reactions to some of the things that I did, that I think would be fascinating to see if you were going to tell the outlaw story through the Schmodown. It would be a fascinating documentary. I mean, if I had enough money to pay you to do it, I would legitimately have already commissioned it by now, because I think memories are going to fade. People's feelings are going to get a little softer, and you're not going to get the like full on really, unless people are still holding grudges or whatever, but full on emotion that you would normally feel for something like that. And I'd want it to be an interview with the players and the fans to see both positive and negative again, to see what the experiences were like. So yeah, 100%. There is a mini doc they did, but it was combined with the show that I always felt shortchanged my side of it a little bit. And I would have loved to have commissioned one that explored all of it, because I think it was an insane thing to live through, and I would have loved to have seen from other people's perspective. And I hope I would have the strength to be like, Steve, tell the story where it takes you, and I trust you that you're gonna be okay with telling that story, or you deliver a great product. Rather.
Well, first of all, I love you and think you're awesome, and so that will be that would be in the movie. That can't not be in the movie. But and I also think, and the reason that I know that you would probably agree to that approach
Yeah.
is that you have not only have you grown and changed a tremendous amount in the last 9 years, but you have publicly grown and changed
Yeah.
and talked about, oh, I regret doing this or I do that. And so watching that journey would be great. And I would totally 100% do exactly what they did in The Last Dance. Is I would hand you that fucking iPad on the couch. In fact, I remember when we did, because Last Dance had come out when we were doing the Cine-Files documentary. And I remember talking to you and you were saying like, wait, what do you want me to do here? And I said, pretend you're Michael Jordan. And I just showed you this clip on the couch and now react to it. And then that's what you did.
That's very true. I remember that now. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true. All right. Well, we should wrap up there. Thank you, Maxwell Israels, for the wonderful question about documentaries. And clearly, both Steve and I have very strong feelings about documentaries. So we hope you enjoyed our discussion, and thank you for indulging us in that discussion. And thanks to all of our patrons who support us here on the Cine-Files. We can't thank you all enough for your constant support, your constant love, and appreciation for what we do here on the show. And for my co-host, Steve Morris, I am the Outlaw John Rocha, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of Cine-Files Shorts.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Cine-Files Shorts. I am Steve Morris here with my partner, John Rocha.
Hello.
John, have you ever been to a film festival?
I've been to a couple of film festivals, yes, in my lifetime.
Well, that's very interesting because Ryan Lieb wrote to ask, film festival short? He said, hey, Steve and John, I'm currently in Kansas City for Panic Fest 2023 and having a blast. This is my first ever film festival experience, and it got me curious. Have you guys attended many film festivals? If so, what are your favorite ones? What are some memorable experiences you've had? And are they something you would recommend to the average cinephile if they have the opportunity to attend one? What do you think? Would you recommend film festivals?
I do recommend film festivals, and I recommend them for the young. That's what I would say. I mean, film festivals can be quite exhausting. If you have no problem, if you have no bowel issues, if you have no problem like sitting for long stretches of time, so no hemorrhoids or any of that, then I absolutely recommend film festivals. Also, if you have no problem not sleeping, if you go to the really big ones like TIFF or like Sundance or these other ones, or Con even, which some people get to go to, they can be quite exhausting and quite demanding of your time. and you're not going to get into everything, which is another part of this. So you've got to kind of coordinate things correctly. And it's not like buying a bunch of tickets and you just show up and they let you in. You have to stand in line to see for hours sometimes to see if you're going to qualify to get into the theater. So there's a lot here that's involved with film festivals. Once you actually get in and watch the movie, it's pretty awesome. And I remember I went to a couple of them in DC when I lived near Virginia, DC. When I was first just kind of developing my love of film, I would go and sit for hours. And I remember there was a film festival going on. We were studying in London in '98, and I went to a film festival there at the Prince Charles Cinema. And they had, I saw Untouchables there. I saw a bunch of great films there. And the most I've ever seen is 5 films in one day. But like I said, I was when I was young, so I only had to poop and piss once a day, you know. But now, as I'm older, there's much more demands on your time. And can you get in? Can you get out? Will you be uncomfortable? So the realistic nature beyond the utopian purity of going to a film festival is that you have to kind of be aware of your body and can your body handle the requirements of a film festival. So these are the
So
questions. These are the answers I have.
so the basically what I'm going to call the old man answer never occurred to me, and yet you are 100% right.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have thought of bringing it up, but to say that to some degree this is a young person's game is true, because what's great, and there's a huge difference, by the way, between going to Sundance or
yeah,
going to Toronto or one of these big ones
right,
and going to the Shriekfest Horror Festival or the
right,
the Nature Documentary Festival in Wyoming or whatever it is. They're very, very different experiences. And so first of all, if you're going to one of the big ones, yes, you are going to be standing in a line a long time.
yeah,
You're not necessarily going to get in to see what you want. Um, and it is, but there's also, if it's just you're a true lover of film, this
yeah,
opportunity to do what you said, which is, I'm going to go see 5 films today. I'm just going to go from one film to another. And what's so great in general at most of these festivals, some of the filmmakers are there, some of
yeah,
the actors are there. There's
right,
going to be a Q&A. And I would say, you've heard my theory before that bad movies are 20% better on airplanes and good movies are 20% worse on airplanes. Um,
okay,
you're thinking through that. What I mean is, like, an airplane is a great time to watch that crappy action film
yes,
that you wouldn't, because it, and I will say it is generally 20% better. And if you watch Citizen Kane, it is 20% worse on an airplane.
yeah, it's not the right environment. You're right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Film festivals are an easy 20% bump.
yes,
Because the excitement of being there with the filmmakers and seeing a movie nobody else has seen, it's just played a few places, is really, really cool. There's a palpable excitement there. So
yeah,
that's really, really fun. And and in the smaller festivals, because whether it's the, LGBTQ festival
mm,
or African American festival or some of these festivals that are more niche, they really want you to come. They're not sold
yeah,
out. They're like really, and so there you really will get to go talk to the filmmaker and talk to the
yeah,
people that are there. They're super exciting. I have largely gone to film festivals as the filmmaker, and
mm,
I gotta tell you, man. I mean, we
yeah,
went when we had Siren when it was at
right,
Sundance.
right,
Is like, it's cool to be a filmmaker, like, because at Sundance, I had the Magic Pass. So
yeah,
I didn't have to wait in the lines because I was a filmmaker. And so I got to go see so many great films when we were at Sundance.
yeah,
And there's sort of you walk around because you're wearing the badge and people go like, "Oh, you're a filmmaker? What's your film?" Like, you suddenly become, I'm going to do another 20%. I became 20% more interesting
yeah,
because I was wearing that filmmaker badge.
yeah,
So I had a lot of really good experiences as a filmmaker at film festivals.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a great thing to experience films in that way. And you're right. And the people who are there to celebrate films, are there to elevate them and really indulge in the joy of film. And so you're around common folk that are think like you. And I don't mean common folk in terms of status. I mean common in terms of you have a lot in common. And so that's a great thing, and you find your people in a place like that. And you can go and sit, and strangers sometimes you'll strike up conversation with strangers sometimes sitting in that time in between the movie. Because sometimes you got to stay in the same theater in the same seat,
Right.
possibly in a situation like Hall H is very close to a film festival
Sure.
type vibe when you go to Comic Con. You stay in the same area. If you could move up, you try to move up in between panels like you do in between films, but it's pretty much your area. So you can plan out in that way. But you'd be surprised how many people strike up conversations and you have like some fun interactions as you all talk about the movies and the things you liked about the movies that you see, which I think is great, you know. And like you said, there's those sometimes the filmmakers and the actors or the producers or the creatives show up, which is great. But there's sometimes these film festivals, like I've gone to the TCM Film Festival for many years, and I love going to the TCM
Oh,
Film.
those are great.
That's my language, TCM Film
Yeah.
Festival. And it's much more spread out, even though it can get annoying because it's over multiple theaters, but they're usually within walking distance. And so you can appreciate that. But they also have these fantastic panels
Right.
that you can go like by a pool or somewhere there where you can listen to some of your classic film actors or directors talk about that classic film. And it never seems like they're annoyed by it, which I think is also a great thing with the TCM Film Festival. They never seem like they're not wanting to talk about the film, you know. So there's also that joy that Steve was referring to, because I got to see Spartacus with Kirk Douglas in the movie theater, and I got to see Blazing Saddles with Mel Brooks sitting in front of me, laughing along through the first hour before he had to leave. So, you know, there's those little moments that you cherish from film festivals for sure.
Well, the thing about, I think it's culture, you know, which is that the kind of people that are going to go to the TCM Film Festival are the kind of people that are going to be respectful of Kirk Douglas and Mel Brooks. You know what I mean? Like they're so they know they're in like a welcoming environment.
Yeah.
And the same is true. Like the people, you know, going to Sundance is it's not cheap and it's not easy because it's way up in the mountains and stuff. Is that the people that get there are generally really into film. The thing about Sundance is also a scene where people want to be seen. They're in their outfits. They're spending a lot of money. It's very expensive. And that's why, like, as a filmmaker, there's a whole strategy to applying to film festivals, which I won't get into. And frankly, I didn't handle terribly well. But there are the majors, which is Cannes and Sundance and Toronto and Telluride and those things. And nobody gets into them. And then there's what they call the mini major. Yeah. I mean, it's like, well, because the thing is like if Sundance has, let's say they have 20 features. Well, the fact is that 8 or 10 of them are already picked because it's Brad Pitt who's in an indie film and they have, you know, it's like, that's kind of already figured out. And then they're going to pick 2 they're going to try to be representatives both in terms of style of film. So you will have a horror movie and a drama and a comedy. And then they're also trying to be representative in terms of what are the filmmakers? What worlds are they representing? So the number of windows for your particular film to get into fucking Sundance when they get about 8,000 submissions.
It's tough.
Is really not going to happen. But then there's what's called the mini majors, which are things like Mill Valley and Vail and Palm Springs. And these are important film festivals where important films have their premieres, but the competition isn't quite at that same level. And so, and for you as an audience member to go to them, it's not the crazy scene of trying to see a movie at Sundance, and it's not as fucking expensive to go. And so finding one of those festivals is really different. And then there, like I said, the smaller niche ones that serve a particular style of film or documentaries and things like that. So if you have a particular interest, if you are a nature person, there are a whole bunch of film festivals devoted to nature documentaries. And at those ones, instead of just being like the filmmakers that are there, because I've been to some of them because of the shark docs, is the scientists are there. And if you think
that's cool,
filmmakers are willing to talk to you, scientists are. If you want to walk up and go, "Oh my God, I've always been fascinated by the garden vole or whatever the fucking documentary," and someone's like, "You want to talk to me about the garden vole?" They'll have dinner with you. They're so excited to talk to you about, because that's their specialty.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to hear about sort of what it's like for a filmmaker at a film festival?
Sure. If you want to let us know, go ahead.
I'll give you. So it's a very strange experience, and the first thing is things get fucked up. So one of the big lessons I learned, and it took me a really bad experience to learn this lesson, was I had a miscommunication with the biggest film festival we were at for the assistants was at Vail, and Vail is one of those mini majors, and I sent them the wrong format of tape. So I show up in Vail and they can't play my tape. And I'd sent it to them 3 weeks before. And they didn't tell me until I arrived. And they said, "Oh, yeah, we can't play your tape." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I had a Blu-ray, but they couldn't play the Blu-ray. And so fortunately, one of my other actors was flying out, and I told them where to find a key to my office to get into my office to get the correct tape. And they flew out so that was really scary. I've showed up at film festivals. I had one where I was there and there was no sound.
Oof.
So I'm down there, and the projectionist wasn't really. This is a small film
Yeah,
festival.
yeah.
This is the Colorado Film Festival, and the projectionist wasn't a pro and didn't know how to get the sound set up. So I'm literally crawling around
Right.
this theater trying to hook up the right cables to make sure my sound is working. I've had movies where the color control is wrong, where the aspect ratio is wrong. Like, for a filmmaker showing up, you have to make sure everything's going to work.
Right.
That's the first thing. So that's super, super stressful. And then, of course, you're going to watch your movie with a big audience for the first time and have to get up for a Q&A. And I think that if I hadn't done Q&As at film festivals, we wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. And the reason I say that is I didn't know how much I enjoyed speaking publicly about film until that. That was before I started teaching,
Right.
And it was just like, oh, I like when people ask me questions about filmmaking and film and stuff like that. I feel super comfortable, and I love that aspect. And my career highlight, I'd say, is still winning the audience award at Vail. I never get into the Oscars. That was the closest I got. And there was and that was the moment of mini fame. And it was a really big deal for me,
That's great. That's great. All right, Ryan, thank you for your question.
Yes, Ryan, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone else on Patreon. We could not do the show without you. And for my partner, John Rocha, I'm Steve Morris, and I'll see you on another Cinephile Short. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Cinephile Shorts. My name is Steve Morris, and I am here with my partner, John Rocha.
Hello.
And we are retreating from the seriousness. We're coming back through the looking glass, out of the world of JFK and into the world of FMK.
Yeah.
Both of them, 3 letters, both of them ending in K. I think this makes perfect sense. And why don't we jump right to it, John, which is our very first FMK suggestion comes from Cinephile supporter Mark, who gives us the choice of Predator, Alien, and Terminator.
Ooh. So the first Predator movie, the first Alien movie, and the first Terminator movie.
Yes.
Well, I think mine's pretty easy, actually. Oh, yeah. I'd have to fuck Terminator. I'd have to marry Alien because I think that film is almost near perfect. And I would have to kill Predator because it's a cheeseball film. It's a fun film. It's a overt masculine type fun film. But in the end, it really doesn't add much to the overall film landscape. And the sequels have been absolutely terrible until Prey. So, or not terrible, but not great until Prey. So I would say that's how I would go with FMK on this one. What about you?
Well, first of all, that was entirely predictable. Like I definitely knew that's where you're going to go. And now for me, I am about to lose all of my cinephile cred. It's probably going to cost us subscribers, and it might cost us some Patreon patrons who are just going to dump us right now. But I have to be me, John.
Yes.
And there is a movie that I totally admire. It's a fantastic film. I've enjoyed it. It is arguably the best of these 3 films, and I'm going to kill it. And the reason I'm going to kill it is because I don't have fun watching it because it scares the crap out of me, and that is Alien. Yeah. I haven't seen it that many times. It's amazing, but I don't really like it. Whereas Terminator is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I find Predator to be a ton of fun. And so I am marrying Terminator, and I am fucking the massive, masculine, ultimate macho movie of Predator. That is my choice. You could judge me. You can hate me. I totally understand why what I have done is wrong and is not forgivable. And yet I'm standing by it.
Yeah, 100%. It is horrible what you've done, and I don't know how we go forward, but somehow we will soldier along. Let's go to the next one here, which I think is going to be interesting for you and I who are big Star Trek fans. He's like, this is from Paul, and he said, here's a challenge, FMK. Picard Season 3, Strange New Worlds Season 1 and 2, and the entire Star Trek original series. And just to dig the knife in, he said, ha, 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 ha. So, Steve, you're going first.
Well, I started this by saying why everyone should turn on me, and I believe that this is why everyone should now turn on Paul, because particularly with the ha, ha, ha. I mean, this is pure. Look, so here's the deal. There is no universe in which I would not marry Star Trek, the original series. that's done. I mean, like there's just
I agree.
it doesn't almost nothing you could put up against it, because I am married to Star Trek the original series. Not only did I do a podcast about it, but like that is as deep in my soul as any television ever there. So regardless of my feelings about Picard season 3 and Strange New Worlds 1 and 2, both of which are great, I'm marrying Star Trek the original series, and I think, unfortunately, and I feel terrible about it, I have to kill Strange New Worlds season 1 and 2, even though I think season 1 is good. Season 2 of Strange New Worlds is arguably one of the greatest seasons of Star Trek ever and rivals the original series and some of the great seasons in Next Gen. But the thing is, I've lived with those characters from Picard, from Next Gen, for so long, and it gives such incredible wrap ups and senses of closure to those characters that I adore, that I can't kill that. So I got to keep Picard season 3 around to fuck, and which it's not really the best fuck, to be
They're
frank.
old. Yeah.
They're all, yeah, it's not the sexiest to show, but I have to marry original series. Therefore, I have to kill Strange New Worlds 1 and 2 because I don't want to kill Picard season 3. That's my reasoning.
Let me tell you why you're wrong.
Okay.
But I agree with Steve. I also would marry the original series. I don't know if there's anything that formed my morality and my approach to the world the way that the original series did as a young kid growing up, watching them on TV, and seeing the stories and, taking the messages and understanding what the show was trying to say and having it work for me all these years later still moves me and touches me in ways. And I just love that series. So absolutely, I marry that series for good and bad, right? Because like there are some great days I'm going to have in the marriage, and then there are some bad days I'm going to have in the marriage. So there are certain episodes that certainly are tough days to get through in the marriage, but still overall, it is absolutely what I would marry as well. But I would fuck Strange New Worlds season 1 and 2 because that is the closest to the original series that we've ever gotten.
Sure.
But is also like walks its own path, has some really interesting episodes. I think is a little kinky, a little dirty, a little frisky, a little fun, and also with some elements of love that pop up every once in a while in the show. Certainly with Kirk and Christina Chong's character, with Khan, right, and also with Spock and Nurse Chapel. So I like that element. Oh, and of course the captain as well, Anson Mount and his relation. So there's a lot here too that is interesting and new and different. And I think having sex with Strange New Worlds seasons 1 and 2 would be different every time and exciting, interesting. So I'm down with that. But I was never the biggest Next Generation fan, only because how are you going to compare to the original? So I always discounted Next Gen until later in life. So I don't have that same kind of connection to Next Gen that like you might have, or Scott might have, or Vogel might have, as I've had conversations. But I revere and respect it. But in the end, I don't feel like fucking it. So I would have to kill it. That's at the end.
I mean, look, in terms of a fuck, you have made the right choice. I made the wrong choice. Yeah. But I just couldn't kill.
Of course.
I couldn't kill Picard season 3.
I respect that, actually. And that speaks volumes, because that's the kind of good person you are. Like, I can't kill you. I'll keep you around. The other one, I haven't been around as much, so I'm going to kill that one. That makes sense. Your loyalty. Yeah.
Well, our next one comes from Ryan Lieb, who offers us the choice. It says FMK 2023 edition, Barbie, Oppenheimer, and Killers of the Flower Moon.
Oh, bro, you couldn't have lined this up better for me. I'm gonna tell you, I will marry Oppenheimer 1,000 ways till Sunday. I mean, that film, I can't wait. It comes out in November, later on this month on 4K, and I can't wait to purchase that thing and watch it religiously, relentlessly, and all the behind the scenes features on that. I love that movie. It's apparently back out on IMAX in certain places, so I may go see it again. But yes, I will absolutely marry that film because I still think it's the best film of the year. And I've seen a lot of these other contenders like Maestro, Killers of the Flower Moon, and these other films, and The Holdovers, and I still think Oppenheimer is the best right now. I would absolutely have sex with Barbie. No problem fucking Barbie 7 days to Sunday, because that's a fun film, and there's a lot of beautiful women in that movie, so I have no problem fucking Barbie. And also, it could be some interesting pillow talk afterwards with Barbie, I think, as well. So could be fascinating on that one. And I'm absolutely killing Killers of the Flower Moon, because for those of you who maybe don't follow me on social media or didn't read my review, I was really let down by that movie. Although I thought Lily Gladstone was incredible in the film, Scorsese pitched us a film that was going to focus on the Native American Osage point of view. He made a big deal in numerous interviews saying he changed the script to make it focus on that. And in the end, it really doesn't. We're still watching two white men navigating, or their point of view about, and three, once Jesse Plemons comes in, about the Osage people. And it's so unfortunate. A massive opportunity was lost, and no amount of pretzel logic that I've seen other critics do are going to convince me otherwise in what was going on and what Scorsese's failed intentions were with this movie. I put it in a pile with Gangs in New York, in that there are certain elements that are great, and one really great performance from Daniel Day-Lewis, but it does not overall save the film for me when you look at it. So I would absolutely kill Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm probably never going to see the movie again.
So I was furious with Paul for forcing us to make such a difficult and painful choice.
Yeah.
And I am grateful to Ryan for giving us what I think is a pretty easy choice. Because to start with Killers of the Flower Moon, I think I like it more than you, but I have the same issues that you do. And if you go like, well, do I want to marry a situation of horrible murders within a marriage and the betrayal of a people, or do I want to fuck a situation in which there is horrible betrayal? And like, it is not a sex. I think it's a beautifully made movie in many ways with great performances, but it is neither marryable nor fuckable, even if I liked it more than I do, which I don't. On the other hand, if we're gonna ask a movie you want to fuck, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Barbie is like
That's
among the most beautiful and sexy women in the world.
Yeah.
And to be frank, Ryan Gosling is sexy as hell in the movie. I mean, that is like an all sexy movie. And it is, and frankly, it is a universe in which, wait, hold on. I just realized there's one big problem.
Okay.
Do the characters in Barbie have genitals?
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to say yes.
I mean, is it fuckable? I'm just going to say, in whatever bizarre context we've decided that we can fuck a movie, that Barbie is fuckable. Come on. I mean, like, and I agree with you. I haven't seen all the films that you have seen this year, but Oppenheimer is the greatest film I've seen this year. It is an absolutely phenomenal. It not only is it the greatest film that I've seen this year, it is the first movie I've seen in a long time that I felt qualified as a great film in the way that the great massive movies of the past, and I'm talking about the Lawrence of Arabia kind of films. This is the first film in a long time where I went, oh, I'll have to see it more than once, and I'll have to, have time to kind of sit with it, whether or not how high up in that category I put it, but it's in that category. So yes, I'm killing Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm fucking Barbie, and I am with you marrying Oppenheimer.
There we go. All right. I have the next one, right? Anthony Palmas. Okay. So Anthony Palmas this is a long one. Okay. He says, and in case I might be able to make the cut on a future FMK, here below is what I wrote to y'all in one of my emails. Hi, John and Steve. Anthony Palmas here, pronounced Palmas. I can't recall if you've already FMK'd these, but here goes. Decide FMK on the following three Martin Scorsese gangster epics, leaving out Mean Streets because it doesn't seem to share the same scope as the following. It doesn't. Goodfellas, Casino, and The Irishman. Or the reboot of the Planet of the Apes films, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, or the Zombie Romero films, or the Star Wars films, or Ozzy Osbourne's Guitarists, or The Exorcist. So I say the Goodfellas, Casino, Irishman is probably the better one if we haven't already done it. Have we?
We have not. And I was going to say, or we could just FMK Anthony's suggestions and decide which one of them we would fuck, marry, and kill. And then,
I kind of, out of six of them, I like that idea. So we would have to pick two to fuck, two to marry, and two to kill, right? Is that what we would have to do?
Is that what's happening here? Okay. So our choices, to be clear, is we have a Martin Scorsese one, Planet of the Apes one.
Yes.
The Dawn of the Dead ones.
Yeah.
The Star Wars ones.
Yes. The original trilogy. Yes.
And the Exorcist ones.
And the Exorcist one, and Ozzy Osbourne's solo career guitarists, Randy Rhoads, Jake Ely, and Zach Wilde.
Okay, I don't really have comments on some of these. So
Well, those are the ones you would kill, I would imagine, right?
yeah, so this is easy because then I'm killing. I will kill the Dawn of the Dead and the Exorcist ones.
Oh, okay. So you're fucking Ozzy Osbourne's guitarists or possibly marrying them.
Yes, that is correct.
I love this. Go ahead, please.
Yes, because if in the Ozzy, now I'm not a huge Ozzy guy, but I'm gonna say that in the worlds of Ozzy Osbourne guitar solos, there is a lot of drugs and naked women and
True.
sex and crazy 1970s heavy metal fucking. And so that is definitely going in the fuck category.
Okay.
And now, and then I, oh yeah, no, this is actually pretty obvious. I'm also fucking the Planet of the Apes movies,
Okay.
which are really good and I totally like because I have to marry Star Wars and the Martin Scorsese films. That's they're in the marriage category. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little controversial. I'm going to go and marry the Scorsese films for sure. That's no doubt. But I'm also no, you're right. God damn it. No, you're right. Shit. The more I think about it, I'm going to marry the Star Wars films as well, the original trilogy, because I mean, you marry you marry the original series. I mean, you can't. It's like the Star Trek that we talked about. You got to marry the original series for sure. You got to marry the original trilogy. So fine, I'll marry those two. Yeah, I would absolutely have sex with the Planet of the Apes series because it's an out there series. It's scary and unsettling, but also fun and interesting and challenging. And wouldn't you want that in a sex partner? Because you don't know what's going to happen next. Sure, let's go Ozzy Osbourne. Let's keep it that way. No, actually, you know what? I don't know that much about the guitarists. I know Randy Rhoads because he died young, but I don't know many Ozzy Osbourne solos, so I can't speak. I'm not going to speak out of my ass. So I would have to kill that and kill the Dawn of the Dead films because I don't watch a lot of those films.
Yeah.
So, but I will have sex with The Exorcist because God knows what the fuck's going to happen. But I'm going to enjoy it. Yeah, in my younger years, Steve, I didn't mind playing with fire, shall we say, wearing certain things or not wearing certain things. So for me, I guess I would have to go with The Exorcist because I could get some terrible disease that'll feel like a demon inside of my body. So there's a chance. So I guess I would go that route because I was crazy back then.
Well, good luck with that. Our next FMK comes from Kevin Schofield, who says, Harrison Ford three-way battle: Blade Runner, Star Wars A New Hope, and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Shit. Okay, here's where I'm going to be a little controversial.
I wonder if you're going to do what I'm going to do. Let's see.
Fuck. I got to marry Blade Runner. I know Raiders of the Lost Ark is the better marriage and it'll last longer. And I understand that. But Blade Runner has always had my heart. It is the save screen on my computer and on my phone. So, and I'm going to get a really cool poster that I'm building. So, fuck. Yeah, I got to marry Blade Runner. There's no way out of that. I'm doomed to this marriage, and I may wake up and she's gone one day, or she's a replicant, and I don't know what I'll do. But yeah, I got to marry Blade Runner. Oh man, I'm in so much trouble for this. I would. Fuck. Oh, I don't. I guess I will.
This might be the most hemming and hawing I've seen you do.
Because, man, all right, fine. I will have sex with. I will fuck Raiders of the Lost Ark. I will fuck Raiders of the Lost Ark. God forgive me. I will fuck Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because I just think that movie is fantastic. And I love that movie. And I love Marion Ravenwood and that relationship and the danger throughout that movie. The score, everything about it, I just love. It's not that I love it more than New Hope. It's just that I think Empire Strikes Back is the harder choice. And I would have killed Raiders of the Lost Ark if it was that versus Empire Strikes Back. But because it's a New Hope, which I don't have the same kind of like reverence that other people have for it, I have to kill it. Whereas I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is arguably the best of that trilogy. I don't think A New Hope is the best of that trilogy, so I can kill A New Hope. And I know I host a Star Wars show, but that does not mean I always choose Star Wars no matter what. So there we go.
Hey, I killed Alien at the beginning of this thing. So,
That's cool.
I think, Kevin Schofield, you've made a classic blunder, which is if you had put up Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back,
Yes.
this would have been way harder.
Yes.
But the fact is that Harrison Ford is not the lead of Star Wars: A New Hope. He is a smaller character. There's much more Luke Skywalker's movie. He's great, obviously. Yeah. Whereas when you get to Empire, the plot line with him and Leia is like so huge, and his character comes to life so much. And so because of that, yeah, I'm with you. I'm killing A New Hope. Yeah. I got to marry Raiders. Raiders is so important to me. Totally and I also think, despite all the problems and despite the fact that maybe this isn't a great relationship all the time, Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood love each other. 100%. It is a real love story. And so I am marrying Raiders. And I think, Blade Runner, it might not end up great. And there's a lot of pain in a lot of way, but it is a sexy movie in its way, just visually and style and all that stuff. And so I am fucking Blade Runner. That is my choice.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good place to stop our latest FMK. These suggestions have been wonderful and painful and terrible, and we love and hate you in equal parts for all of what that you put us through. But really, we just love you because you support the show. Without Patreon, there is no Cine-Files. We wouldn't have been able to keep this going, and we can't keep it going without your support and without your incredible suggestions, all of your great ideas. It's great to have you all as part of the Cine-Files family. And for my partner, John Rocha, I am Steve Morris, and we will see you on another Cine-Files short.